In the Money Media podcast, In the Money Media YouTube channel. Not PTF for the people who usually watch here on In the Money Media. Many are calling me not PTF for that reason. And they're also calling me Ray Cotolo because that is the name that my mommy and my daddy gave me on that fateful evening. I wasn't a morning baby. In July of 1999, the year of the Lord, which also might be every other year. But this ain't every other podcast. It's a podcast by harness players, for harness players, and if I'm being honest, I mean, for pretty much anybody, really. One guy specifically who this podcast is for as well, my continual co-host here on the Harness Players podcast. You might all know him by his name. I know him as my co-host, but I also do call him Michael Prebozy, even though he's Mikey P now, since he's inside of the influencer space. He had to go and snazz up his name, and I imagine your whole family's fine with that.
They are fine, yes, and lots of hats on. Look! Check out this hat that Edison sent me from the Elite Lop. He was in Sweden, and he was kind enough to send me some programs. Actually, I have them here, so. Shout out to Edison on our coverage of the Elite Lop, and that was fantastic. But he sent me this hat also. So shout out to Edison Hatter. Appreciate him.
Right, literally.
Great coverage that he had over on Sovala for the Elite race. And, we got a little merch. So.
Yeah, Edison, quite literally the Hatter. But what other caps might you be donning?
Okay, so we got the Creekside Chat.
Wait, you mean the podcast from Diamond Creek Farm, who happens to be one of the sponsors of the Harness Players podcast?
Yeah, and check out the Creekside Chat, and it has shown up on the In the Money Black feed, so you can catch a couple of those podcasts for the Creekside Chats. I think they do a fantastic job, and then they go inside the barn and they discuss all stable workings, breeding. There's a lot of good information on those podcasts. So check out the Creekside Chats that Diamond Creek puts on monthly. I do appreciate them. And now you can catch them on the In the Money feed. So jump on there and catch up.
This is so impressive, though, Mike. They happen to just deliver me a cap, too.
Perfect.
As we're recording this show. They must have sent one of the Diamond Creek drones over to the studio and then drop shipped it right on my doorstep. I was able to actually run out and get it while you were talking. But this is our podcast, so right. I'm gonna turn it to the back and it's gonna go wherever it goes. Go for Glory. What's that?
Yeah, Go for Glory stable. Yeah, so Go for Glory is a fractional ownership stable that I'm very familiar with. Pedro Baez is one of the guys that is involved, and I've been involved with Pedro for several years with owning horses, and now he has merged with, Charlie Longo, and they bring you Go for Glory stable that's expanding. You have the ability to fractionally own horses similar to the stable, and everyone's familiar with the stable, and certainly stable was a nice sponsor last year. Well, now we have Go for Glory this year. They have new stock all the time. And they got some cool merch also. Just great guys that are in several different areas. They're in Ohio. They're in Pennsylvania. They're in New Jersey. They have horses racing at Plain Ridge. So jump into Go for Glory if you're interested in ownership. You won't be disappointed. Really great guys to be involved with. And I have to say, I do appreciate them as well.
And Baez, a longtime follower, supporter of us. He may be Pedro Baez the third, but he is the first inside of my heart. And also, we have John Rallis on the show today. What's up, John?
John, we need to get you some merch.
Yeah, it's fitting that you're wearing all those hats because you typically wear so many hats. I don't even know what you do on a day-to-day, Mike. But yeah, I could add some hats to my repertoire.
I mean, if you want to talk the metaphor, this is your 15th visual appearance in the last 3 weeks because every racetrack wants a little part of you. Are you not? Are you feeling quartered in some ways? Your arms getting pulled one way, your legs getting pulled another.
Wish I could clone myself. That's what I wish I could do. We need to discover that or find a way to do that.
That would require us to have to fund the sciences, and there's no
Maybe
money
he would
for
have
that.
time to send me more horses then if he had a clone. That'd be good because usually his information's pretty good.
Yeah, of course, we were bringing John on because the focus of this episode, 5 minutes in, we're finally getting to the title of this tells everybody what it's about anyway. We're going to be talking about North America Cup eliminations. Keyword, America. It's not the North American Cup, as many people will say time and time again. It's the North America Cup. And John, of course, does a lot of work with Woodbine Mohawk Park. Are you going to be on the desk for this weekend and next weekend's races?
I will be on set for the majority of June. I will be on set with the Randy Waples on Saturday for the Elims, and I will be taking over paddock interviews on the North America Cup final. So Elisa Blow will be coming in to work alongside Randy Waples and Chad, getting a chance to call his first North America Cup. So that's going to be a really, really cool opportunity for Chad and kind of full circle for me. I started off my broadcasting career working my first NA Cup with Elisa and Randy. And now I get a chance to do that again for the second time in 3 years. So it'll be a lot of fun.
Well, and as Mike alluded to, also, we got you on because you tend to have a pretty good instinct when it comes to these horses, especially up at Mohawk. You've gotten familiar with a lot of the local horses, too. You could probably provide us insight on how well they can do versus the American imports, especially with the rivalry between America and Canada, intensifying for reasons I won't go into discuss, but I will say, John, excellent move on your country's part against the tariff debacle to send all that wildfire smoke south of the border and to make our air quality go kaput for these next few days. But all that aside now, let's quickly touch on some of the debutante races before we get into looking at these North America Cup eliminations. 3 total. Once again, a big showing for the North America Cup. I think was it 2 years ago or was it last year that we had like 29 or 30 horses enter, John?
I think I can't remember the exact amount we had last year, but I remember 2 years ago we had like 4 limbs and you needed to be top 2 to secure a spot. So that was I tell you what, I've never had more fun watching elimination races than my first year working the NA Cup. I mean, you had to race. You had no choice. I mean, you can remember even Vukafalis just jumping a shadow on that opening turn. We've seen that with a couple other horses too. It's going to be interesting to see how they respond early on of the night, because some of those horses still, they might need to get acclimated to racing at Woodbine Mohawk Park, and early on in the night, I think that's something to monitor, especially in those Elims.
John, real quick, I'm going to jump in. Sorry, Ray, but a lot of these horses that are shipping up have limited starts this year. So you're jumping into a race that's going to be for $1 million that you have to qualify. And some of them only have one start. They have a couple qualifiers. Sometimes the horses don't always respond to those circumstances. And it's interesting that these barns are campaigning these horses this way because they're not battle tested at 3. We know what they were like at 2.
Yeah, but I think you have to respect some of these top connections too, right? I mean, they're going to have these horses ready, especially for $1 million on the line. Yeah, ideally, maybe you'd like to see a few more starts. I know even a horse like Pappy's Pistol, I think Sam DePinto would have loved, trainer Sam DePinto, he would have loved to have a few starts under his belt, for his colt coming into this race. He had 3 qualifiers. He had the 1 start in the Sun Beach somewhere, albeit he did get stretched out in that effort in what was a 4th place finish. But like, again, you've got this elimination to kind of get your, you still have another start to get yourself acclimated fitness-wise. But again, when top 3 qualify, you got to bring your A game. But yeah, I wouldn't worry too much, like I said, about these top connections. I think that they're going to have them ready. Obviously, Captain Optimistic being one of them with just the 1 start. Again, these barns do some heavy training. They'll bring them in, in overnights just off 1 qualifier and have them ready. So I'm not too worried about that.
The first bit of news from this North America Cup news cycle week, though, the decision that Millar Farms and Nick Galucci made with Chantilly, because coming into 2025, they kept teasing that this generational talent may actually try to go up against the boys. But, John, as we see, they decided to go the path of least resistance and to try and get what I believe is like a $150,000 check if they can win the Fan Hanover. She's in the 2nd elimination. Your thoughts on that decision, and maybe even on Mikee and Minnie in the 1st elimination?
Yeah, I think that obviously, I think it generated a lot of buzz. It was a big talking point over the last few months. it would have been really cool selfishly to see her compete. I think she would have held her own. I'm not just being biased because I'm a big fan of this filly. I really think that she could have held her own. The first start of the year kind of had people worrying just maybe a little bit, but the second start winning in 49-4, and those conditions weren't ideal over there at Woodbine Mohawk Park. I do think that maybe kind of said, okay, she's going to head over to the North America Cup and compete against the boys. I thought that start might have been an indication that she was going to do it. Ultimately, it's what George Millar said and what Nick Galuccia said publicly. It's a really long season. You want to make sure that your filly stays sharp throughout. There's still a lot.
He's actually frozen by the decision. John may have wished to have Chantilly in the North American Cup, and now his brain has just stopped under the fact that she's not going to be there. But I guess, Mike, we can kind of touch on this from a gambling perspective. Those eliminations, and then some of the eliminations on Friday night too, have a lot of really decisive chalks. Chantilly in the second, Fan Hanover elimination for one. Of course, Mikee and Minnie, Breeders' Crown winner in the first elimination. At least from your purview, Chantilly probably seems like a stronger horse, that maybe one we can't beat. But that first elimination with Mikee and Minnie, she's also interesting because you said she's only coming off of one start.
Exactly. And, you're going to get a short price with that one. Now, that was a pretty decisive win for Mikee and Minnie, first time out at Pocono in one of those PSR Stake all-star type spots. This one was proven last year, but didn't maybe necessarily get good until the end of the season. I do think that, now, of course, she was never out of the money, but she won some of those big pots, big races. So I think this elimination is a little dangerous for a horse like this when the big money is on the line next week. They're trying to race into shape. I wouldn't expect 100% effort here, as we talk about in these eliminations all the time. So you have to be very careful with these big chalks that are looking to maybe work themselves into these finals where you have the big money. These aren't races I really want to bet unless I'm looking to oppose these big favorites.
And we have John Rallis back with us now. John, we were just telling everyone listening or watching that in the end, you were so aghast that Chantilly didn't want to take on the boys that it actually just froze your entire body and stopped your brain from functioning. But we were just kind of touching on Mikee and Minnie in the first elimination. And correct me if I'm wrong, you're kind of alluding in our little pretext planning thing here. You're looking to bet against her?
I am going to look to bet against her in the elimination. It could be a really tall task, and I'm likely going to be wrong in that instance. But just before we get into that, I mean, Chantilly and Mikee and Minnie, the fact that hopefully we get to see both fillies square off in the final, because it's fun to hear the chatter last year.
John has a terrible internet connection.
Remarkable stuff happening over in John Rallis land. I imagine you've got to think, a guy like him who's at Scioto Downs one week, Meadowlands the next week, Mohawk the week after, he's using up all of his bandwidth. So then when he comes to do the Harness Players podcast, the rent's due, and he hasn't paid it. So then he doesn't have the 5G to come in.
Still frozen.
There's
back.
Okay, there he is.
John, fix your internet. You need a hard line or something. What's going on here?
I have no idea what's going on. But before we get frozen again, yes, I am going to look to play against Mikee and Minnie with duration. Thought that was a really good effort last time out.
You love that horse.
What? I honestly thought that filly was going to step up and have a big freshman campaign. Unfortunately, she didn't really pan out off of her first two starts, I should say, as a rookie. I loved that effort last time out. Conservative approach from the 9-hole, was finishing up really well at the Meadowlands. I was there live for that effort. I think she's coming to this elim sharp, and I'm hoping she can sit on Mikee and Minnie's back and maybe go by her. I'm aware it's going to be a tall task, but I think that you want to try and extract some value in that pick 5 sequence. I'm going to have to go all in on.
All in and all out for John.
The other possibility here is that all the gambling sharps are so terrified of John leaking their edge that they're doing a DDoS attack on him right now. So that way, no one can know who the sharps are betting in these races at Woodbine Mohawk Park.
We need John to switch to his phone or something. That might be better.
But you're right. Like I forgot how often John would text me last season being like, this is the time for duration. This is the time for duration. And then it's been so long between then and now. I saw her on the form. I was like, wait, who is this horse again? I have no memory.
I knew right away when I saw duration pop up that John was going to love this horse again. He just gets attached to horses, and that's what happens with him.
And it's hard, especially as a gambler, when you can see that there is that semblance of ability. In some ways, you're waiting for it to connect. I actually have a real vivid memory of that long ago. Do you actually remember a horse from the George Teague barn named Del Marvelous, who eventually won the Adios Pay? I was on that horse, if I remember correctly, from before the NA Cup. Until then, I was just waiting for him to finally put it together. And then he won the Adios at like 13-1 with Brian Sears in like 2013, 2010.
You can look that up, I'm sure.
Other people can look it up. But
and it was a perfect Sears drive, if I recall, back to his Meadows roots.
And so in some ways, the moral of the story there, you do get rewarded when you're right. And I had another instance of that happen on Hambletonian Day. I forget the year, but it was when Dorsey won the 4-year-old trotting mare race, the I'm a Lula, because Maven broke stride. And I remember being up in the press box, Jay Bergman going, how could you bet against Maven? How could you bet against Maven? And then me and my dad were just like, it's easy. We just bet against her. and I had known, like, Dorsey was always getting fourth at 99-1. And you could tell that she was like string 2 of that trotting battalion of Zernisons from that year. And she was just finally able to take advantage on Hambletonian Day, which was really cool. And then plus, that was one of the rare times we did the Twin Spires Players Pool. And so we had a lot of money on Dorsey, too. She really made the day real early. But while we're waiting for John to pay his dues, as he very clearly is still trying to do, Mike, let's you and I talk about this first elimination of the Pepsi North America Cup. Pepsi, of course, a refreshing beverage that I don't really drink that often, but Mike, I guess you sometimes do. John, we don't know what you drink, and we don't really care as long as whatever you drink maintains a proper connection to your mind, body, spirit, and this podcast. We're talking about the first elimination of the North America Cup, and you kind of touched, John, on John, you had kind of touched on Captain Optimistic coming into the race in, I don't want to say seemingly good form, because even though he was second last time out, he only lost to a horse that worked a better trip. I feel like that's a perfectly fine tune-up inside of this race. Are you ranking Captain Optimistic to be an incredibly strong favorite in that first elim?
I would think so, yeah. I thought that was a really good effort. And I'll tell you one thing, he got beat by a colt who many believe might be the best or second best one this year. And he's not paid up into anything, and that's Twisted Destiny. I mean, how good has he been so far in a few tries? So I think he would have made serious noise in these North America Cup elims had he been paid into it. So, it was obviously he got beat as the favorite last time out. But again, it's who he got beat by. He got himself a nice mile into him. And, I just like those qualifiers. I thought he looked really good. And the most important thing is he looks like he's overcome some of those steering issues. Knock on wood. Hopefully he can, keep that up throughout the rest of the year. But we know that's hindered him a few times last year.
And looking at this morning line too, Mike, we see Swingtown is the second choice at 9-5. I don't know necessarily if that's how this race is going to play, though. Like, Swingtown was a really solid 2-year-old for Ron Burke. But it was also interesting to see when he was talking about his line of 3-year-olds. He ranked Swingtown third, which, of course, as the season goes, maybe that horse can prove himself a bit better than his leading charge, Blueprint, who's coming up in a few races. But do you think that there's a potential avenue of value here if we concede to Captain Optimistic in trying to beat Swingtown out of the ticket?
There probably is underneath. I think Swingtown is a horse who's probably susceptible to maybe missing the ticket. He did have some issues of getting warm last year, right? That was a tendency of his as a 2-year-old. They've still raced him on the front end, throughout the course of his, limited starts this year. There's a chance that he can get picked off late in the mile, and I think Ronnie's correct in his assessment. I do think that he's probably the third best out of those three. There might even be other ones who are probably a little bit better than Swingtown, but I think Yannick's going to have his choice ultimately in the end between Sippin' on C-Rock and Swingtown. But I do think there's some value players that you want to maybe look to underneath in that spot. But I want to hear Mike's thoughts first on that.
Well, Mike, I know Ray's a big Swingtown fan. I do think that this horse, it's interesting that Burke got him going earlier this year. They showed up in the Hackett with this horse. Yep. You saw he needed a start, and then a qualifier, then a fairly nice win at Scioto. But now we're getting back into the deep end of the pool here in an outside post. He would be a horse I would probably oppose in this race. I don't know. And like you guys mentioned, this one might be second, third tier in that Burke barn. Could have been first tier given that, as talented as he is. I mean, he won 6 out of 11 last year. So, but in this race, for me, I'm not sure that I want him. Captain Optimistic, I do think that he should be ready to roll here. I know that he, was defeated first time out, but he got that start out of the way. I like that 26 kick in that May 17th qualifier. I like his talent. And this is, I think, like a typical Nancy Tactor type move. Also, with this one's going to be loaded for bear. And I do think that could end up making noise in the final, could be the one to beat depending on where that he draws. So he would be the one for me in this race. And I think this is maybe the right elimination too for this one, where that they can maybe take a fair shot and really kind of show what he has. A lot of these other ones don't really match up, I think, with speed with him. So, we'll see what happens, but I'd be more Captain Optimistic than Swingtown, certainly in this first elimination.
Yeah, and to your point, though, I will say, I mean, I probably would almost feel more inclined. I think I did slot Swingtown underneath, but I think if you're looking to play, I think I would honestly feel more inclined to use a horse like Bourbon County underneath. I mean, tell you one thing, that horse has really started to get into shape. He was facing lesser company in Kentucky, but 6 wins and 13 tries, had a lot of confidence boosters into him, and that was tied for the fastest final quarter of the night last week, right? So 26-2 tied alongside Madden Oaks. Mind you, there was probably a little bit less wind later on in the card. Really, really good effort inside draw. He's going to have every chance to, to clinch a berth into that lucrative final next week.
He did get a perfect trip last time, though. I mean, he's not going to get a better trip than that.
He got a perfect
Why
trip.
not? He has a good draw again. Why can't he work?
Yeah, he's going to have speed. He's going to have speed to chase too. Perfect draw or not, Mike, he responded really, really well.
That was a good. I agree with that.
He outkicked the Colt, who raced really well too and light up the world, who everybody said would likely be the winner in that elimination. I mean, I thought that was a really good effort. I think he can build on that.
He was the next most logical to me too, but this is a situation where, say, Swingtown is the second choice. I think the exact of Captain Optimistic to Bourbon County only pays, if you're lucky, like $4 to the dollar.
How do we more than that?
I mean, potentially. I just feel like, especially coming off of a win like that for that Paul Reed trainee, a lot of people are going to want to try and go to him as the potential value move, and that has the risk of driving the return down. But I couldn't tell you what the Swingtown exacta would pay. I think it could be on level with Bourbon County getting second, especially because he has the draw advantage to the Burke trainee all the way on the outside. Otherwise, that was my issue, John. I don't know who else really contends for the underneath spots. And there are a lot of local types. Are there any that maybe you could see eking into the try or something like that?
I mean, Joel on the Jets, his first start of the year was actually really impressive. He left out of there, and he showed some good kick late in the mile, and he went by a horse who many pegged as a potential North America Cup player in DA Loveboat, but we're seeing him bypass, the eliminations, and he's just going to compete in an overnight. I don't think the connection saw what they had hoped for in those 2 starts. But I do think Joel on the Jets is probably one that could definitely hit the ticket. I'll tell you one thing though, Captain Optimistic, you better believe that they want to try and win that elimination to assure themselves a good draw, because Nancy Tactor has had poor luck when drawing posts in some of these big races in Canada for whatever reason. It just hasn't had much luck.
Hey, but that bad luck worked for her in the Hambo, so maybe it's not all bad and miserable.
Hopefully they don't stop at the border this week. I mean, that would be ideal. They could get the right people there.
I won't touch on that. Elimination number 2 is race 7 on the Saturday card, and here we see the Metro Pace champ coming back, trying to do what few Metro Pace champs have done, come back to win the North America Cup. This used to be a stat that I had on my brain, but because I have so many other fun facts inside of my noggin now, I don't remember the exact number of horses who have pulled that double, but it is rare for the most part. And John, I feel like a lot of the enthusiasm for Fallout has waned over the last few weeks, potentially in part because Blueprint has really been stamping himself as an even better competitor than he was as a 2-year-old, as well as Captain Optimistic. But do you think that people might be wrong to dismiss Fallout so soon?
I think there's no. I think they are wrong. I don't think he's a colt that you can dismiss. You can have a preference to other colts, but I don't think this is one to dismiss. I don't see what he's done wrong in 2 starts this year. Took on older company in his seasonal debut, and I thought he finished up well. I thought they got exactly what they had hoped for. Got a chance to let him stretch his legs out during the stretch, and he just missed out by a head. And last time out in a Pennsylvania Sire Stakes event, he got picked off by the colt who everybody believes is the one to beat. So I think he's been great through 2 starts. I think that he should be coming into the sharp. He's never lost in Canada, right? He's only raced twice in Canada. He seemed to really like it. I remember Tony talking about the shoeing and maybe getting acclimated to the surface a little bit better and on the track surface at Mohawk as opposed to the Red Mile. So you have to figure it's going to be all systems go, and could be a full circle moment for Tim, right? Winning his first North America Cup with Captain Treacherous, and he's got a chance to do so with one of his progenies, right? So it's going to be a good opportunity for Tim and Tony Alagna, of course. And yeah, I think this colt sharp. It's a tough division, though. I'll tell you that.
Really tough.
Yeah, I was just about to say to you, Mike, from a betting perspective, this is probably the best betting race of the 3 eliminations because you have such stacked competition, along with potential coming into this. Or the potential I'm thinking is horses like Madden Oaks, who aren't really proven, but coming in off of stellar performance over the track. Crack Shot, a local type who somehow put himself together as a 2-year-old and seems to be carrying that form into his 3-year-old season. And even one of the horses that John was alluding to earlier, Light Up the World, who was foiled by Bourbon County in that Some Beach Somewhere division. He's in here as well for Beaton and McDonald, of course, 2 guys who have done really well, not only here at Woodbine Mohawk Park, but across North America. Where would you be looking to go here? Because it seems like there are a lot more options than in these other eliminations.
I mean, I'm a Sippin' on C-Rock fan. I really like this horse. I do think he's the favorite in this race, though. So can you oppose him in here? And I do think that maybe it could be a time to do that because it's so difficult to figure out who is really going to win this race. I do think that he's got a ton of talent. He's wicked fast. I mean, he broke the record last year as a 2-year-old. He probably should have won the Breeders' Crown. I mean, he certainly didn't get the right trip in there. Kicked 25-3, and Blueprint ended up winning that race. But he was right there on the wire with him. He's been prepped similarly to some of the other Burke horses. Got a nice win last time at Scioto at 1-20, whatever he was there. But I like his talent. I like his speed. But again, they're all trying to get into the final here. Something John mentioned with Poppy's Pistol. I thought that was a pretty nice comeback race, and he fought very well to the end in there, especially given his odds and I thought in a tough spot, just given the way the race shaped. I thought he raced well, and I think that he's a horse that maybe could jump into the final here. He'd be a horse that I would be interested in using in the try in this race. And he will get lost on the board because you're going to get money for Light Up the World, Crack Shot, Sippin' on C-Rock, Fallout. I'll take money in this race. So Poppy's Pistol would be the horse that I would want to mess around with because I think he's probably going to get a better trip now. He's going to be under the radar, a little sneaky. I think he can hit the ticket. He's the one for me to maybe bet around with in here.
I can understand. We've seen Sam DePinto do this kind of stuff before. The one horse that I really think of from many years ago, We Will See, was his horse. He was actually able to hit the ticket in the North America Cup the year Thinking Out Loud won. All these years really blend together at a certain point. But that aside, John, I want to ask you this, because with Sippin' on C-Rock, the main thing that had me scratching my head, which wasn't lice, because I'm very hygienic. I do shower. I couldn't really figure out off of that Hackett third place finish, him going into the Buckeye Stallion Series instead of the Ohio Sire Stakes. Granted, it was a good confidence booster for him to rip around the track at that speed, but does that raise any concern to you that they wanted to go for such a weak spot on the bounce back?
I think they wanted to do that deliberately to get like a quote unquote training mile in them, right? I mean, you took nothing out of each colt They did it with the utmost ease, and they got a nice little a tightener. I think the other divisions, while I still think they would probably get the job done, I think that it would probably be a little bit more taxing, right? So I think it's perfect efforts from both of his colts to kind of come into this North America Cup. Yeah, obviously, if you're an owner or trainer kind of looking at the Stallion series and thinking to yourself, oh man, I got to go against, two of the top colts in Ohio, you might be a little bit frustrated in that regard. But I'll tell you one thing, I think that's exactly what they wanted out of those colts. Nice little tightener. They're coming to the sharp. But to your point, Mike, I do think Pappy's Pistol could be a nice value player. I mean, we haven't mentioned Madden Oaks. I know I alluded to him earlier about being the fastest, pacing the fastest final quarter in that Sun Beach, or of the night rather, with Bourbon County. I was really looking forward to see where he was going to draw. He's a colt who literally hasn't proven anything in terms of Grand Circuit company, but obviously having been at the Meadowlands, over the last couple of years, Camp Capone last year especially, Camp Capone kept raving about this colt. I've got one who's got a wicked turn of foot on the end of it. I mean, you wouldn't believe how fast he is, and all he did was take on Overnight Company. So our first glimpse of him was going to be in the Breeders' Crown Elimination, but he scratched lame in post parade. So I'm sure that was frustrating for them. And again, I wanted to get a glimpse of him. I'll tell you one thing, he wasn't kidding, because the final quarter that he uncorked, I mean, he was behind cover that was not advancing. He had no business to be third in that effort, and he responded really well on a night. You couldn't close. You needed to be on the front or near the lead to have success that night because of the wins, and I thought he put forth a really good effort. But it gets so much tougher because we mentioned this is a really tough division, and he's got a really poor post, so he's going to need to be put in play because you can't be out positioned against this group. You just can't.
What do you think about the driver choice, John? I mean, that's certainly a surprise.
Camp Capone was sticking to being loyal to his regular pilot, right? I mean, the plan was all along in the Sun Beach that whoever was going to drive Madden Oaks in the Sun Beach somewhere was not going to get the drive the week after. They were always going to stick with Braxton Boyd. I believe he had maybe another commitment in the States that he had to tend to with another colt or another, I believe a trotter it might have been. I'm not, if I'm not mistaken. Braxton, Camp Capone has always said this is Braxton's drive, and he's gonna stick by him. So I like the loyalty there, and this is a big moment for him. There's a couple of guys who are going to compete in this race for the first time. Brett Beckwith as well. We'll touch on his elimination later as well. Camp Capone being in this race for the first time. His dad is actually All-American Nate. He had All-American Native, I believe, in the early 2000s, who got defeated as the favorite. So he's looking to kind of redeem himself as well and do what his father couldn't do. But I love the way this colt raced. I just hate the draw for him. And you talk about spicing up the exotics. He's one that I'm definitely going to be using because with that,
I think it's with him though. I mean, to have Braxton Boyd drive. I mean, it's not that there's any indictment on him necessarily, but I mean, to jump into the Grand Circuit, that's he's a capable driver. But I mean, how much time has he spent at Mohawk? Probably very, very, very little. And now he's obviously moving up in the world and starting to get better drives. And this might be a launching off point for him. Yep. But drawn outside post in this kind of race, when you need to make the final, well, I mean, he's probably going to be, you say he's going to be involved, but how's he getting involved here whenever you have the fallouts, the sipping on sea rocks, the crack shots? All these horses have plenty of speed. I would imagine that they're not going to sit with Light Up the World either. And then, So he's probably going to have to come from last again. I mean, right? Doesn't he?
He's gonna have speed to chase, that's for sure. But you're right; it still might not matter given where he might be situated early on in the mile. Braxton Boyd does have an aggressive nature and how he likes to drive. He likes to be aggressive. Now, this colt doesn't typically like to do his work on the front end too much. He does get a little bit lazy. You could even see him kind of giving him reminders in that win at the Tioga Downs, the start prior to the Sun Beach. So, but you're right, Mike. It's going to be really tough for him to get involved because he's got the worst draw possible. But it just might even benefit him, especially if everybody's going to be vying out for early positioning and we see like a wide scramble early on in that first turn.
I was able to remember through all of this that we will see was second the year sports writer won the North America Cup. For everyone who wanted that trivia fact. And also
12 at that point.
I might have actually been. That would have been my first North America Cup, I think. Because didn't sports writer win the Metro in 2009 and then the North America Cup in 2010?
A little while. So 15 years.
Yeah, that would have been my first North America Cup that I watched. I like Fallout. I agree that Madden Oaks is an interesting closer, but I guess last point I want to touch on here, John, because you have a little bit of insight to this from my understanding. What do we make of Crackshot? Because I got to see when he came to Lexington, him just totally reverse wherever he was going wrong Do you feel that he's continuing on that positive trajectory coming into this race?
You know what? It's funny because he went to Lexington, he came back to North America, and he was taking on grassroots company, and he just, as a 2-year-old, and was just able to keep on winning. You heard Greg McNair kind of talk about that. They did some vet work with him in Lexington, and he just came back a different colt. He just ran the table the rest of the way through, got a chance to compete in the super final, and got the job done there too. So he just kept elevating in terms of competition and kept producing. I got a chance to speak to assistant trainer Chris Matthews as well for Greg McNair, and I just said, what's with the drifting? Like the drifting, and it's a little bit of a concern. You don't want to be drifting out, especially against some pretty good colts. They were happy with his effort. They said, he still paced home in sub 27, and I understand that, but for me, it is a little bit of a concern. When you see that again, you don't want to have any sort of quirks going up against these caliber of colts. So it looked like he was going to be maybe like a main player, but just some of those efforts kind of concerned me like a little bit, especially the most recent one. So he's going to need to step up even more to make this elimination, especially with the competition that he takes on in this group. But yeah, I do think there's some reason for concern, but let's see if he can get those issues rectified going into the Elim.
At the same time, depending on however much money he's taking, that could be a great way to open the door for some of these other horses to hit the ticket, because we know, like, if Matt Noakes has that opportunity to charge home and Crackshot doesn't somehow veer in his path, he'll be able to gobble up that ground while Crackshot's having to compensate for what he's losing in the drift. So just an interesting little note in constructing your tickets. Let's talk about the last elimination. That's in race number 9. It features Lou Print, Breeders' Crown winner, given out by Ray Cotolo. That's the part that most people remember. That it was Ray Cotolo's best bet of the whole Breeders' Crown weekend, and it did come through. And a lot of people were like, who's Ronnie Wren? I'm like, I know who Ronnie Wren is. He's the winning driver of that Breeders' Crown final. And we got like
just
7-1.
Pick, by the way, in case anyone cares, which they don't.
Well, that might be the second thing that they remember. The first one is, well, we could discuss this ad nauseum, but he's 4-5 on the morning line, flat off the board. Do any of us think that he's losing this elimination?
It's going to be tough. He's going to get too much respect, and I just don't think anybody's got the ability to go with him in this current group. So, I think everybody's going to be looking to finish second and third in this elimination. So, just because of the draw he works with, the respect that he's going to get versus this group, it's going to be awfully tough to outsprint him.
How do you rank, though, the speed inside from that Doc Moore pupil, Prince Hal Hanover? Doc continuously gets these speed freaks year after year. The pylon post, obviously not ideal. I've heard every driver at Mohawk lament how you can't leave out of post 1, especially with the slanted gate. But do you think that maybe Prince Hal can be a little competitive, or is it something where if he gets the pocket, he just rides all the way and hopes for the best?
Oh, he can be competitive. I just don't know if he's got to find a little bit of an extra gear. Listen, that win at Pocono 2 back was impressive. His win last time out was impressive too, fending off a pretty good colt who's race super. But he's going to be involved. He's going to find a way to get involved one way or another. One thing about Doc Moore, you never have to worry about his horses not being raced. He'll come out publicly and say, "My job is to train. Your job." Whoever he puts on, he wants them to drive his horses aggressively, and if they don't perform up to their standards, he'll take the fall for it. So, really, there's no rest for horses per se, but obviously, if you're playing along or if you're watching, you love guys with that kind of aggressive nature. So this horse has been sharp so far this year. Look, he was second in the Metro last year, right? Mm-hmm. So this is a colt who's proven that he can be competitive with this group, and everyone's going to need to find a little more in this group to beat Lou Print. But I tell you one thing, he's the headliner. But this is a really deep division too. I think the first elimination that we touched on is probably the weakest in totality. I think that this one is really, really strong. I know that all eyes on Lou Print, but there's a lot of other colts who are coming into this off some really, really good efforts that I'm sure we'll touch on as well.
I was going to say the one that really caught my eye, I just don't know that his racing style is really going to work, is the one that Brett Beckwith is driving inside of this race. Every time you watch Making History in that last quarter of a mile, correct me if I'm wrong, John, he's not really that big of a colt compared to some of the other ones. He's a little kind of he's just a little smaller, but he has such a turn of gear and he loves to pass horses. But the main thing that tends to stand in his way is he's always just way too far back. And I just feel like if at some point he can actually get a little closer, he could at least be somewhat competitive with these guys.
It's the steering issues that he possesses. Obviously, this is going to be a really tough task for him. I know that when he can stay straight, he can pace really well. We saw that. Honestly, he had no business to be third. He kind of looked like he wanted to put in that New Jersey Sire Stakes final. Looked like he kind of wanted to put in steps. He was a little bit crooked. You could see that when he finally was able to put it all together, he was able to pace pretty quickly. The lack of experience overall is really, really going to be, I think, a tough task for him. I wasn't sure whether the connections were going to, try the North America Cup, because I think this is probably a little bit too deep for him. But when he puts it all together, he shows ability. It's just that, again, like only 3 starts in, and this is a tough group. I'm not sure. Who knows if he's going to have enough, but he's been conservatively handled for the most part. So this is a colt who you don't have to say, is he coming to this effort fresh, right? We could see that Brett hasn't been overly aggressive with him. Even his first win, when he did get the job done over Manolette, he just kind of sat and pulled at the top of the stretch or halfway through the stretch and was able to go by Manolette, who's been racing really well. So I think this is too tough of a task for him. Again, you want to be close, because we touched on the Prince Hal, you touched on making history. We haven't even touched on colts like Dandy Ideal or Courts on Fire. How good was Courts on Fire in his Sun Beach performance? I thought he was really good, and I got a chance to talk to Jason Bartlett last week when he told me he was coming down to when he was coming here to compete in the North America Cup Limbs, and I said, which colt are you coming with? And he said, watch out for Dandy Ideal. He says, I'm telling you, he's going to be under everybody's radar. And I watched that qualifier over at Pocono. Really impressive effort. 50-1. You kind of just let him walk that last pylon a little bit, had him shut down. That was a big effort. So, something to be kind of cognizant on. Maybe he's a value player to use underneath, especially with an inside draw. Jason Bartlett's not coming there to take back, right? He's got a good draw to work with. He's going to be in situated nicely. But again, Courts on Fire could be another horse that I mentioned. That was a really good effort. I think you've got to be really pleased with that performance against the company that he took on last week.
You're like everything you're kind of painting almost in some ways works better for Blueprint, because Bartlett's aggression joined with Doc Moore's horse most likely going forward. Blueprint being so handy, he can just kind of float away and let things materialize and go past them. Like this could set up to be a somewhat fast pace that, in my mind, maybe opens the door to a horse like Making History, hitting the ticket and making the final. But we haven't gotten to Mike yet. Of everything that's said, anything pop out to you that you agree with, or you kind of lone wolfing in a different direction?
No, I mean, I think John makes a ton of good points, and he watches a lot of races. I mean, he's watching qualifiers, he's watching all these races, and he's seeing these horses develop. He's seeing a lot of things that a lot of people don't. So you should be paying attention to what he has to say when it comes to these horses. For me, I'm looking more at how this race is going to shape. And the 2's going to sit, the 4's going to sit. So a horse like Danny Ideal is going to get a nice, the ability to get away in a very forward position. If you watch Courts on Fire last week, he lacked room in the stretch. He was flying late. And I do think that one plays really well versus these horses also. But I thought Prince Hanover was excellent last time. I mean, really, Captain Deo had a perfect pocket trip and could not get by him, and really had no excuse not to get by him. And this horse is improving. He likes the racetrack. I know last year he didn't win that much, but he was always right there. I don't mind the inside draw for him, because he's with the 2 sitting behind and the 4, both of those. There's not a lot of horses I don't think they're going to really pester him to. He's going to be 1, 2, 3 early, so there's not going to be any excuses. Depends. I think the key to the race is the 7. What do they do with the 7 early in this race? Because this horse could show some speed, maybe could show an early move, is stepping up in class, but it's Brian Brown. He usually brings his horses ready to fire in these big races. They're like you said, Jason Bartlett isn't showing up, to sit. Well, Brian Brown doesn't bring his horses not to be raced also. So I do think that he's the key to the race. You want a fast pace. I think that's the horse that's going to have to provide it, because the 2's not, the 4's not. The 3, I think, would be content with a trip in the race. The 1's going to go for sure, but he's stuck inside. Blueprint's probably going to take over early. What does the 7 do? Because if the 7 heats the race up, it changes everything. So that's sort of my thought on who's the key to the race. Yes, Blueprint's the top pick, but I like Prince Hanover, and I do think that he would be the horse that I would be trying to kind of key around.
Yeah, I really couldn't make odds and ends of how to use Pants on Fire either. And like, it doesn't seem like the horse has that type of gate speed to really launch out of there against Dandy Ideal and Prince Hal, unless he's like floating away mid-pack and parked, and then Dunn is forced to go forward.
He's got to do something though, right? I mean, he's got to get himself in. Does he try to follow the 6? I don't know. I don't know what kind of trip gets him into the final in this race.
Well, it's top 3 and then what? Highest earning or fastest 4th place finisher?
I haven't confirmed that yet, so I'm not 100% sure on how that on what makes the 4th place finisher, which one qualifies. But I'll tell you one thing, I think we're gonna have some decent eliminations though. I really do. I think there's a lot of horses that even just looking at some of these elims, you can talk yourself into a few other horses. I think there could be a bit of a sleeper in regards to there's going to be a horse that we didn't expect to not make the final. That's not going to make it. I think in one of these elims, I don't know which one it's going to be, but I think it's going to set up nicely here this weekend.
Swing down.
No, and again, we're getting a really good edition of the North America Cup. And on top of that, probably one of the best crops of pacing 3-year-olds we've had in a really long time. Like, if you can get all of the top ones into a final, you probably have 10 generational horses going against one another. And who knows what could come from that. And of course, as the season goes too, we'll see who maybe rises to the top, who kind of flattens from stellar 2-year-old form. It's still really early inside of the Grand Circuit season. John, since we have you here and we've talked about North America Cup, we just want some final thoughts, because before those eliminations on Saturday, there are eliminations for other stakes on the North America Cup undercard on Friday, June the 6th. Most notably, I shouldn't say most notably, I think they're the only ones, the Armbro Flight and the Goodtimes eliminations. Armbro Flight for the trotting mares, Goodtimes for the trotting colts, or 3-year-old trotting colts and geldings. Last year, we got to see Highland Kismet dominate in the Goodtimes, and then that lead towards a Hambletonian campaign that almost resulted in victory. This time, almost is certainly right. And again, that everyone knows that horse is Ray Cotolo's top pick in the Hambo. But that aside, this is a different edition of the Goodtimes. Do you think that there's a similar amount of heat going into that race as a Hambletonian prep?
I think there's probably one horse in particular that everybody's going to be looking at in terms of Hambletonian hopefuls. I think that all eyes are going to be on Motocon Legacy, right? Obviously bred and owned and by determination, and his preps have been really good, and we know that he won a Breeders' Crown elimination last year. He was able to pick off Meshuggah in that Talim, so there's a colt with some ability. It kind of flies under the radar to some of the top ones, but he's still, I think, a top 10 contender. I think Ken Workington, his Hambletonian top 10's got him maybe fifth or sixth on his top 10 ranking. So I think a quote that really going to be fun to monitor over the next couple of weeks. Landing on time is a Rick Zeron trainee that has been impressive. He showed some ability last year, couldn't stay trotting. This year he's been able to stay to task, and he's put forth a couple of nice victories. So maybe not up in the upper echelon, but I do think that Motocon Legacy is one that we're going to potentially see come out of the Goodtimes if he is victorious and work his way into a Hambletonian contender.
And then those Armbro Flight eliminations, there are 2 of them. It seems like we've been really lucky over these last few years to get somewhat deep trotting mare divisions. And now we join in not only Svenstedt's presence, because he's been here for the last 10 years plus at this point, kind of pumping these upper trotting ranks, but he's also getting some imports into the action as well to just deepen the waters. Anything really stand out to you in those 2 Armbro Flight elims?
Yeah, I think the H trotting mare division this year runs through Oka Svansted's barn, right? And Dial Square was a really nice debut winner last time out. MM Stream tried to Yannick and MM Stream tried to quarter pole on Oka, and Oka just said that she was a little bit too hot, and he ended up parking her the entire route. So I thought she was a narrow winner. Obviously, she had to use up some pretty quick speed early on in that mile. I'm looking at Drawn Impression. I think that Luke Blay, we've seen some of his trainees come off the bench in some of these stakes events and get the job done. We saw Private Access. He was able to fend off a determined Warwi Michelle. I don't know what to expect from Call Me Goo first time out. I thought that was a really good qualifying effort at the Meadowlands, but she might need to start. Mind you, only a couple of horses don't make the final between the 2 eliminations, so I think, I'm not sure what kind of approach we're going to see in terms of aggression. I think Call Me Goo is interesting to see. I'll tell you one thing. We spoke about this filly a lot last year. Elise de Hanover. That first start of the year was really good. She finished up really nicely. I know she had speed to chase, but she's one to watch out for as well. I know she didn't get as much respect because they were saying she wasn't beating anybody. I disagreed. I think that she raced well all season long, and I thought her first start as an aged mare was really, really good. So I think she's coming into that race sharp, and we'll see if she can take a step forward as the year progresses.
And Call Me Goo, of course, is going to look to defend her title in the Armbro Flight because she upset last year over everyone remembers that horse. Thank you, John, so much for joining us here to talk about these North America Cup elims, and hopefully, you know, I know you're like a big shot guy now and all, and sometimes you don't answer my texts and my calls, and it's fine. But you know, it'd be nice if for North America Cup final, you come back to join us and talk about it.
You owe me one anyway, so you better be here.
It depends on the day.
Yeah, because John has Monday through Sunday all booked, and in the end, I know he's gonna make space for us, his boys. But you'll be at Woodbine Mohawk Park this weekend and next weekend, and then of course everyone else they'll see you wherever. You don't have to tell people where you are. You're just gonna show up, and they'll see you. But that does it for this episode of the Harness Players Podcast. Of course, again, thanks to Diamond Creek Farm for helping to support content like this focused on gambling and on handicapping, on analyzing the sport of harness racing. We need a lot more support of that from the industry, and Diamond Creek stepping up to the plate. And okay, that one was a ground rule double, but it'll be a home run at some point. Ooh, I have my pen. I don't have my pen on me. I just have this little guy. But it's just because it's a little cold in here. Nonetheless, we'll see you next week when we talk about all of the stellar racing at Woodbine Mohawk Park, including the final of the $1 million Pepsi North America Cup, which John will be here for to talk about.
One way or another.
Otherwise, thank you for listening. Make sure to subscribe to In the Money Media on YouTube. We're almost at the 14,000 goal. If we get to the 14,000 goal, Peter Fornatale will allow me to see my family again. Please hit that goal. I want to see them. I love my dad. I don't remember what he looks like, but I will if you can get us to that 14K goal. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And make sure to catch the next episode of the Harness Players Podcast whenever it comes out.